And hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Cyrus Webb Presents. I'm your host, Cyrus Webb. Glad you all could be with us as we are continuing our 10-part series with author Dr. Teresa A. Smith, or Dr. TAS, if you guys have gotten to know her. Hello to you, A. Ruth, good to see you. Hello to you, Naheed, joining us from the West Coast. Appreciate you all for being with us. This is part of our 10-part series we're doing with Dr. Teresa A. Smith, Dr. TAS, about her book Transformation. Glad you all could join us from coast to coast. There is Dr. TAS. Going to go ahead and bring her in. We're actually in week number 5, and I got it right this week. And it's an interesting topic as we're talking about transformation. If you guys do not have your book yet, we're going to remind you can be able to get your own copy of it. Dr. TAS, how we doing?
I'm good, Cyrus. How are you?
All right. Always. You know what? We haven't seen each other this much ever.
No.
So it's been great catching up with you week after week. We are really on week 5 this time.
Yes.
Message 5 today. Again, if you guys do not have, hello to you. Hello. Hey. Good to see you, Megan. If you guys do not have Dr. TAS's book, definitely go ahead and pick it up on Amazon. It's in print as well as the Kindle edition. The Kindle edition is on sale right now. So, Dr. TAS, before we get into message 5, and this is a really interesting one for what we've been talking about, I want to talk about something we talked about last week, and that is about the build-up, okay? As we've been going through these different weeks, what has it been like for you to see how one message builds on the other?
It's really amazing, Cyrus, because, we started with change is challenging. Then last week we were talking, week 4 was really staying on track.
Yeah.
And then now to go into persecution, because if you think about it, you're trying to stay on track, but then it's like the world is happening around you, and then how do you stay on track?
Yeah.
So it's really interesting how they are building upon each other.
Yeah, and what I thought was so interesting about message 5, Dr. TAS, as you said, it's about persecution. Before now, we've been talking about things really that we kind of have something to do with, have control over. But now we're getting into external forces and how they can impact us. So again, for those who don't have Dr. TAS's book, hello to you, Butterfly Thoughts, good to see you. Appreciate you all being with us. You say this in the book, and I think this is really interesting, as you're talking about persecution. You say, persecution is continuous hostility or harassment directed toward another. So as people are trying to change, I thought it was an interesting subject, Dr. TAS, but it also explains why so many people don't change, because they have things that happen that bring them back to that old self, or things that kind of keep them in that place where they're stagnant. What was it like for you to kind of think about the role of persecution in your own transformation?
It's just as you said, Cyrus, I'm so transparent because I'm living this literally. Even though I wrote it, I'm living it. And that's the reason when I wrote it, I said, you can pick this book up 100 times. And every time you pick it up, you're going to get something else. Yeah. And because life is so challenging, really, it could be a roadmap for dealing with every difficult situation that you encounter. Because after a while, we run through the software quickly. But when you break it down, it's step by step. So when you ask me, how is it for me dealing with persecution in my own life? Well, there are times that maybe I'm not as pleasing for people. And so, when I don't do what people expect me to do, then there's always maybe some kind of feeling going on. And sometimes there's some pushback. But what I'm learning is, as I continue to transform myself, that I have to get used to that. Because if I let their pushback become the central focus, my primary focus, then I'm going to stay stuck. And I can't blame that on them, even though it is an external factor that's impacting me. I'm responsible for me. So I have to make decisions that are in my best interest.
Yeah. And you give the example in the book of Sophie, and how Sophie dealt with different challenges, and yet she was able to thrive. I think it's interesting, too, you again tied this into scripture. Of course, Jesus said his followers would be persecuted. He wasn't ambivalent about that at all. He made that very clear. But I think it still surprises us when it happens.
It does.
Because it's like, where did this come from? Or why did they write that? Or what made them say that to me? And then we want to do what so many people do, and that's what gets things started. they react. And they
Yes.
respond in a way without really thinking about what that does to them. Do you think that's one thing we don't think enough about? And I thought about when I was prepping for this show today, that we don't think enough about how we allow the actions of someone else and their opinions to dictate who we are and what we do.
Oh, absolutely, Cyrus. We don't think about it at all. And I think it's because, when we were growing up, we wanted to please our parents or whoever our caregivers were.
Right.
Then we went to school. We wanted to please our teachers. And if we play sports, we want to please the coaches, cheer, all that thing. And so after a while, it's ingrained in us to please other people. And we don't even know who we are or what we need to please ourselves. So yes, it's just second nature. And then when you try to change, those around you and even ourselves, sometimes it's like, okay, what's wrong with me? Because I know this is what I'm supposed to do. This is what everybody expects me to do, but I don't want to do that.
Yeah, you say this on page 26 of the book, for those who have the print edition, Dr. TAS. This attitude involves shifting our perception of the other person's behavior. Rather than using rude or controlling words, try compassionate thoughts and words. When we adopt a different attitude and vocabulary to think about and describe the individual or condition, we turn our attention from the unreasonable to the reasonable, and our response changes. And that goes to this whole think before we speak thing that we've heard that we don't do, right? Because it's so easy for the ego, and I know there were times in my life when you felt like you had to defend yourself, and you, what the ego gets in, but hey, Panther, good to see you. And you felt like you had to respond to each and everything, and that no, there's no way I'm going to let them say that. Or, I'm going to get them. I'm going to tell them. You don't realize what that's doing to you. So talk to us about what you wanted to convey in this particular message, Dr. TAS, about not only the fact that we will be persecuted, we will have people who will hate, we will have people who would try to demean us, devalue us, but it really is about our response to that.
Cyrus, when I think about this, I think, first of all, I wanted us to understand, first, it's faith. That faith has to be there because, again, when you're transforming, you're hopefully transforming based upon what God's plan is for you. So you're walking in the dark. But at the same time, you have to intentionally choose to love yourself. This week, loving yourself has been all in my mind because it's so important. Because we love everyone else, we do for everyone else, and we forget to count ourselves as part of that package. But you got to intentionally love yourself. So when you talk about use the language and being mindful of that, when you intentionally love yourself, first of all, you're going to be mindful of what you say. Yeah. Because we know that words have power and we can bring them to life. And depending upon what spirit or what our feelings are, if we're having negative or angry feelings, when we speak these words, we're bringing that to life. So therefore, we have to be very conscious of what we're thinking and how we say things. At the same time, it's easy. And believe you me, I understand. It's easy to do eye for eye, tooth for a tooth. Yeah. Or in other words, if someone does you wrong, you do them wrong. But we have to be bigger than that. Yeah. And it's not to say that the other person or someone who does that is not a big person. What I'm meaning is you've got to intentionally think about what your actions are doing. Because if I do wrong for wrong, yeah, that person may hurt for a moment. They may hurt for a year. But ultimately, I've hurt myself. And that's another indication that I am not intentionally choosing to love life. Because if I love life, why would I want to hurt someone else or hurt myself by my behavior? So also, I think, seeking and pursuing that space of peace also. Because I think with Sophie, she understood quickly in life that peace was important. Because she could argue with those kids that were bullying her, but what was it really going to get her? They couldn't give her the peace that she needed. So I think that she chose peace or loving herself over all the external things that were happening.
Yeah. Something you also said, and I thought about it as you brought back up Sophie. Well, let me first say, for those who are just tuning in, you're watching Cyrus Webb Presents. We're here today with Dr. Teresa A. Smith, or Dr. TAS. This is part of a 10-part series we're doing based on her new book called Transformation that's out now on Amazon, both in print or the Kindle edition. The Kindle edition is actually on sale right now for only $2.99. but where she has 10 different messages in this book, and we've now gotten up to message 5, which is persecution. Now, again, the theme of the book is about transformation. It's about change. And one of the things that she says is, she said, the first message is change is challenging. It's not easy. And we first have gone through different ways that for ourselves, things we do to ourselves that make it even more difficult to transform. But this particular message is really about how we deal with external forces and how they kind of impact us when it comes to our transformation. And you said this again, I read it earlier, Dr. TAS, but now that you mentioned Sophie again, it goes to another point I think that we don't always think about, that it seems like you're trying to get us to think about. You say, rather than using rude or controlling words, try compassionate thoughts in words. Now, to me, that then is trying to really soften things with the person.
Mm-hmm.
And because we all have heard that hurt people hurt people. Mm-hmm. So it's part of this in the transformation process then, Dr. TAS, not only realizing that hate's going to come, that we're going to have our haters, we're going to have challenges, bullies, whatever you want to call it, but trying to understand and lead with love on how we can deal with them.
Absolutely, Cyrus. You know, we think about being courteous, but I want us to think about being humble, because when you're humble, you're looking at putting others in front of yourself. And remember, since God or Christ is the person that architects the plan, because he has it, then we're striving to be more like him. And he was always humble. And when you're humble, you know, as you say, if you're, as we say in the mental health arena, if you're loud, I should speak softer. Because as I lower my tone, eventually you're going to realize it and your tone will lower. And so to me, when we're talking about those words, because words are so powerful, coming at it from a humble mind. Because remember, as you said, hurt people hurt other people. People come to conversations, people come to relationships based upon their environment, their lived experiences. And sometimes when people are a little rude or a little, they're not necessarily rude. Sometimes when their tone is a little over the top. And you guys can figure out what I mean by over the top, because I just don't know the word I want to say, but it's over the top and it kind of stings you. It's because it's something going on with them. But if you then respond to them in a over-the-top way also, then you've got two over-the-top people going at each other, and then nothing is resolved. You don't achieve what you were trying to achieve, which could have been just calling and checking on a person. Yeah. But because of how you responded to how they responded to you, then you both really have not chosen to love life. You've chosen, whether you realize it was a quick choice, you've chosen to be combative versus being humble. And remember, Christ is humble, and we have to really keep that in mind, and that helps us to control that tongue so that we don't say the wrong thing.
Yeah. Now, for those who are new to the segments we're doing, the way that Dr. TAS has her book split up, she gives us the message, and then she gives us what she calls a Gleam recap. And then we have some questions to be able to ask for ourselves. And the Gleam recap for this one is 4 words, Dr. TAS. And that is, don't seek external validation. Now, again, let's talk about the connection here, because we're talking about persecution and how external forces can come to us and try to knock us off our block, get us a little twisted. But then why is it you say in the recap, don't seek external validations? What are you trying to get us to see? Hey, Herschel, good to see you. What are you trying to get us to see, Dr. TAS, about how it's not just the negative we have to be careful about, but even someone who looking for someone to praise us along the way too?
And, Sarah, she said it so well, because it's 2 sides of the same coin. You got individuals who are going to persecute you, and then those same individuals may praise you the next breath. Yeah. Okay? So you have to be able to discern or to analyze their actions. This moment, you were basically running me down. Now you're praising me. What is the ultimate goal here? And is their goal, does it align to what I want my outcome to be? But keep in mind, you're also going to have those individuals who are just going to put you down.
Yeah.
And or they're just gonna, you got individuals just gonna praise you. And it's not that their praise is good or bad, but if you're deciding that your life is valuable based upon those who praise you, or those who praise you today but don't praise you tomorrow, whatever it may be, then you have really given your power over to someone else. And so then they control your life. You no longer control your life. And just as we have to be intentional about loving life, loving life, I'm not just talking about, going out and having a great time. The life is within us. We are the life. So we have to be very intentional about how we love, take care, and protect ourselves. And so when you've got those external people, Cyrus, and they love you this moment, they don't love you the next moment, because it's based upon what you do that makes them feel well. And if you don't do what makes them feel good, then you're not in their good graces. And you have to understand that.
Let's pull on that thread a little bit more, Dr. TAS, because I think, too, when we're talking about external, hey, Sherry Marie, good to see you. When we're talking about external validation, too, I think it is, especially in the vein of transformation. I think about people, again, going back to how we began this whole series, talking about resolutions, right? And how they'll make a resolution and they will either give up on themselves, or now that we're at this point talking about persecution, someone may say something to them saying, and they feel as though, it's not even worth it. How important is it, or where along this journey should they get to a place where they know exactly who they are and what they want?
It's important to get there, Cyrus. I'm not going to say that we're there yet.
Okay.
I think that we're almost there. Okay. But as you said, these external forces will make you believe that you're not there. Now let's look at this in a different way. We get it when we see persecution, but the external forces can make you believe that you're not there, even when it's something positive.
Yeah.
Because remember, what's positive for one is not positive for the other. But you have to know who you are and be able to evaluate what appears to be positive and see if it's positive for you. Now, it may be positive for everybody else, which is great, but not positive for you. And what I think about, and I'm running it through the brain really quick to see if I can make this work, I think about MC Hammer. And how Hammer really, he built his organization. He wanted to help everybody that he could, and he gave them jobs. And some jobs, they weren't even, I don't think were really quote unquote real jobs, but they were on his payroll. Well, by him wanting to help everybody, it was a good thing. It ultimately became a bad thing. It was good for those who were able to benefit, but for him, it was not at some point in time. So what I'm saying is you've got to be able to judge whether it is good for you in the moment. Or is it good for you long term? And we're always looking at long term because the moment is fleeting. Everything is good right this moment. You eat some ice cream. It's great right now. But if you lactose intolerant in a little bit, you may be hurt,
Yeah. So it's a great point. Sherry Marie says exactly, knowing who you are is critical. And I think that is, and she said that's a good example with Hammer. And you're exactly right. And you can have the best of intentions, which leads us to the review questions or the reflect questions, or as you call them, the reflect and connect. There were two that I thought were interesting here for this particular message, Dr. TAS. One is the golden rule a part of your toolkit? Now, okay, so we're talking about persecution, and we've talked about external validation and not, how we deal with people being negative, but also the praise, not being kind of defined by that. We know the golden rule is about doing unto others as we have them do unto us. Why is that important for us to think about with this particular message?
Well, for Sophie, that's how she actually was able to deal with all the bullying that was occurring. But I'll be honest with you, when I was a little girl, I maybe shouldn't be this transparent. I'm trying to see if it's going to hurt me, but it's okay because I can make it work. When I was a little girl, I was very literal. And it says, do unto others as they have done unto you. Now, sometimes people haven't done good things to you, which goes back to intentionally choosing life. choosing to love yourself. And that's the reason why it is such an important item to have in your toolkit, and understanding what lens to use it, to look at it. Because I could very easy, if I'm very literal, do unto others as they've done unto me. Those who've been nice to me, I'm going to be nice to them. Those who've not been nice to me, I'm going to treat them the same way that they treated me, because obviously that's the way they want me to treat them. But that's not the way to look at it.
Yeah.
We've got to look at it from a higher plane. I'm not using the golden rule because of you. I'm using the golden rule because of me.
Yeah.
And because of what I want out of life, and the connection that I have with God, my intentionality, my decision to be humble, my decision to be mindful of my tongue, my decision to choose good over evil. That's the reason why I use the golden rule, and that's the reason why it's in my toolkit. Yeah. And so when you look at it, you have to determine, okay, what is really the golden rule?
Yeah.
And how do we utilize it?
Yeah. Prairie Dodger, Cindy, I see you. Thank you so much for being on with us. I just thought that was an interesting one. Well, I wanted to lead with that one, Dr. TAS. The second one is explain how you felt when you were ridiculed. And I think this is going to be an interesting one for people as they kind of reflect on their journey, right? Because again, we all know, again, words do matter, right? If someone may have said something that impacted us in an adverse way, they may have done something that done that. Why do you need them to go there? Because a lot of times we try to go past that. Why is it important for them, if they really want to transform, Dr. TAS, to actually go back to a time when they have to think about how they felt when they were being mistreated or ridiculed?
Well, first of all, we just skirt things. That's the first thing. We skirt things. We don't really deal, let me say that differently. A lot of us, we skirt things. We felt it, it was quick, and then we move on. But have you dealt with the feeling? Because if I haven't dealt with the feeling or emotion behind whatever occurred, then that means I'm dragging it right along with me. And until I actually deal with it, then it's still impacting me. And someone can say, well, that was last year. You still upset about that? Well, yeah, because the event is over, but the emotions and how I felt about it, I never dealt with that. So you have to deal with your emotions. As African Americans, lots of times we have not embraced mental health for many reasons. But we have to begin to look at how not taking care of our emotional health impacts everything else that comes from us. And if you're looking at trauma or abuse, then for me, I look at that's how generational curses began, because we never dealt with it. We never dealt with the fact that this happened and this person felt this way. And so therefore, it continues to happen and happen. So for me, being able to go back and deal with how you actually felt, because there's an incident, it's like you cut your finger. It hurts. But if that means more to you, if that cut means more than just that initial pain, the cut is going to heal. But what about the internal part of that cut? We haven't dealt with that. And you have to deal with it because you're trying to transform. If not, you're stuck. You don't even realize it. Yeah.
Sherry says what you said. We haven't had the luxury of healing. Butterfly Thought says right. And Cindy says one of my dad's main rules in the house was the golden rule. And I think that says a whole lot. So as we're kind of now midway through our messages, Dr. TAS, again, the book is Transformation. We begin it with remembering that change is challenging. We're now halfway through the persecution. If people are reading it from beginning to end, by the time they get here, what do you want them to be looking at when they look at the mirror and thinking about themselves?
I want them to, first of all, give themselves a break and realize that, because we have to give ourselves a break, because nobody else will. If you think about it, because if we beat ourselves up, then we've joined them in this. So, give ourselves a break, but also realize it is a cyclic process. Because basically, as I said earlier, we're walking through the steps. And at the persecution stage, then, you got to think about it. Life is challenging.
Yeah.
It's giving myself permission to feel some kind of way. But I got free will. I can either choose to go with the flow, or I can change the flow. Then I have to determine what's going to be my primary focus. Am I going to continue to focus on what happened or am I going to shift my focus? And then, of course, staying on track. So again, once you get to stand on track, but then there's going to be persecution. So it's that cyclic process. And I guess I want folks to understand, Cyrus, that that's normal. It's a normal part of life in every situation. And so don't shy away from it, but embrace it, because once you embrace it, then you can go through it. Every situation you get faster, you go through it, just move on. And then you continue down the road towards what your outcome, your ultimate goals are.
Yeah, what a great thing. Hey, Earl, glad you could join us here. Again, everyone, Message 5 from Transformation, the new book by Dr. Theresa Smith. As I mentioned, the Kindle edition is on sale right now on Amazon. You all can get it there for only $2.99, so take advantage of that. Dr. TAS, how can they stay connected with you, ma'am?
Well, the best way to stay connected to me is you can reach out to me on Instagram at Dr. Theresa Smith, or you can reach out to me on Facebook, Talk with TAS, Dr. Theresa Smith.
All right, Dr. TAS, excited about Message 6 next week, and I will see you back here then.
All righty.
All right. And we thank you, our audience, for tuning in to another great segment of Cyrus Webb Presents. Make sure you guys get your copy of Transformation. Again, we are now up to Message 6 for next week. So you guys can go ahead and catch up by getting your copy of the book. Also, thankfully, we do have the past segments of the show. They are saved on our IGTV, so you guys can be able to go back and catch up to see the great conversations that we've had from Messages 1 through 4 before today. And then, of course, like I said, we'll pick up with Message 6 next week. Until then, I'm your host, Cyrus Webb, saying, as always, enjoy your day. We'll see you back here next week. Take care.